All right, so Anna, we're here to talk about 2 Chronicles 7:14, which it's a passage like, who reads Chronicles? But
nobody.
You've heard this. Almost many American Christians, at least, have heard this verse.
There's a whole song about
Is there a whole song on this?
You can find it on YouTube.
I don't want to, but is there really a song about this?
I think it's a praise and worship song.
Oh, gosh.
You ready for me to read it?
Yes, read it. Everybody, listen up.
Everybody knows this one. If my people who are called by my name humble themselves, pray, seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin and heal their land.
And that's really the key part here. So
that's important.
It's important. And this the reason why this is a proof text that we want to talk about is this is used a lot in American politics and thinking of America as a Christian nation. So if my people who are called by my name, well, that's America.
Right.
Because America was founded as a Christian nation.
Absolutely.
And if you're obedient to God, then God will bless you. And he will heal the land. And I've heard that so many times. Heal the land from whatever you don't like.
Whatever it is that you think, oh, the world's going to hell in a handbasket.
Exactly right. And this verse says, if you, well, it doesn't say, this is taken to mean if you pass the right laws, if you have right everything in place, if you make America obedient to Christian standards, which is itself a very haphazard thing. It's like, who's to say what an actual Christian standard is? But if you do that, then God will bless America. God bless America, right? So, and I mean, personally, I find that deeply disturbing, actually, to use a passage to think in terms of nationalism. I think the point of the gospel, without even talking about 2 Corinthians, the point of the gospel is that we don't have Christian nationalities anymore. That God's interested in the whole world. There's no area, there's no nation that has special status with God. Certainly not America. And when I see this taken really out of context, it's like you can't do this with the Bible. You just can't.
Well, and it's a bit of magical thinking, isn't it? If I just do these, I think there are maybe 3, 5, something like that. If the church does those things, then it's going to be fine.
Right.
That'd be nice. I wish that was the way it was.
And the whole land will be healed.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. Because that's what God really cares about is our land. The thing is that what land is God thinking about in that passage? Well, it's the land of Israel.
Right.
And actually, even more than that, this First and Second Chronicles were written much later than the time of the monarchy, the time of David or whatever. These are clearly post-exilic texts. If you look at the names in the genealogy in the first 9 chapters, which nobody reads, of course, the First Corinthians. My devotional time is names.
Doing a genealogy was so fun.
Doesn't work that way. We don't do that. But, there are names from the 5th century at the end of that. So this it's at least past that. And most people think no earlier than the 4th century probably this was written. So you have these people who've been under the thumb first of Babylonians in exile, and now probably Persians, and the Greeks will come, and then the Romans will come. And they're wondering, are we still the people of God? And what's it going to take for God to show up and forgive the language, but make Israel great again? Right? When is that going to happen? Which is a very understandable idea.
And they're in a context where it sure doesn't feel like Israel's great.
Not at all. No.
It feels bad.
Right. We don't have a king.
There's no king. And not only so, it stands out to me that this whole passage is in the context of the first temple being dedicated. And so that temple's gone.
Yes.
And they're sitting there in the new land. Maybe the new temple's been built, maybe it hasn't. And they're looking at it, and I keep remembering that whole scene of like, well, we laid the foundations of the new temple, and half of the people are happy, and half of the people are weeping.
Exactly right.
And so there might be some sense in which, gosh, this new temple is not that impressive.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
They're hoping for, would you say they're kind of like grasping after yesteryear or something like that?
I think they want, moving forward, I think it is fair to say that they want to see the glory days of old, which was under David's reign. That's how the story goes, which is why David is described in First and Second Chronicles as essentially a flawless figure. He does nothing wrong. There's no mention of Bathsheba or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so he becomes somebody who's like super involved, and he doesn't build the temple. Solomon does that. Darn it all, if he doesn't do pretty much everything else but that, and in the other historical books in And in second and First Kings rather, where David dies and he passes the baton to Solomon, there's really nothing there about building the temple. There's nothing elaborate. It's very, very quick. It's like a verse or two. But this makes David very important because moving forward, we need a godly king and we need a priesthood and we need this temple to be right because that's bringing back the glory days. And I just want to say, I don't have any issue with, I don't blame them at all for thinking that way. The story doesn't quite continue that way in Judaism, but that's the hope. There's actually a messianic hope in Chronicles of what the future is going to look like. And the thing is about this passage, I think this is very, very important. The theology here is called the theology of immediate retribution. In other words, you are rewarded and blessed for your obedience, and you are punished for your disobedience.
Right.
Well, who cares about that? That's pretty standard fare. Well, the thing is that these people are back in the land, but they're still suffering the after effects of the exile that happened probably 2 centuries before or even more.
Right.
It's still not right.
Yeah.
We're still not where we were. We don't have a king. We're under Persian rule, right?
And that becomes just really painful, I think,
very
for
painful,
them.
right.
Just this continual, we don't have a king, we still don't have a king, we still don't have a king. And I think that not only are they longing for yesteryear when David was there, but for the ultimate David, like the make Israel great again, but really, really great.
Really great.
Yeah.
With somebody who has all the, let's say, the good qualities of David. And that's a big thing, as you move into the New Testament, of course, a son of David sitting on the throne, right? Well, that's a big part of what Chronicles actually helps to establish for Jewish and then Christian theology later on. Yeah.
So if this passage isn't talking about God healing America, how can Christians today read it and understand it?
Yeah. I think it this way. I think understanding the context that this is about a particular moment in history where they had a hope, which I think was a limited hope. I think it was limited by their own context. And now that hope is expanded. I mean, the land that's being healed in the gospel, at least, is the world. Everything is it's not one patch of land, it's everything, All authority in heaven and earth have been given to me. This is just, it's the whole thing. And here, it's like, I understand what they're saying, but it's too small in scope where the story finally winds up going. And it's so specific to take this and to sort of plop it into, let's say, the American political scene.
Right.
Why? What's the justification for that? Because you're going to be missing the beautiful theology of Chronicles, which is, I know it's been bad for hundreds of years since the exile. And what are people thinking? I mean, can't get into their heads, but I presume something like, is it really worth it?
Yeah.
Right? See, that's the thing. You have these 2 histories in the Hebrew Bible, Samuel Kings, and then you have Chronicles. And the question, especially that First and Second Kings are asking and trying to answer is, how did we get into this mess of exile?
Right.
Largely by disobedient kings and failing to keep the covenant, and so you're punished for it.
Right.
Okay, but we're back now, and excuse me, I didn't live 200 years ago.
This isn't my fault.
I didn't do this, right? And Ezekiel has the same kind of issue where people are complaining about, listen, I know the parents eat sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge, which means the children are suffering from something the parents did, which makes no sense. And they say, this isn't fair. And Ezekiel says, yeah, you're right, it's not. So it's the one who sins who will be punished. It's the one who's obedient will be blessed. It's the same notion as Chronicles. That grew out of this, what we call Second Temple context, the post-exilic context, where it's like, we're back. God has blessed us. We're in the land. It's not right yet. When is it going to be right? Let's not get discouraged about this.
See, that makes so much more sense out of the, if my people who are called by my name will do X, Y, and Z, because it's not as if they're trying to be overly legalistic. They're just trying to be held accountable for their own actions.
Right, exactly.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah. And as a result, then, God will bless them for their right actions. Now, the question is that like the universal biblical scheme, and it doesn't seem to be, because Job and Kohelet, I don't think that really works. Or some of the lament songs. Sure. That's fine. So there's multivocality on this very issue within the Hebrew Bible, but in this context, it's like we need some hope that what we do actually matters, and we're not simply being held accountable for something our way back ancestors did. And that is going to be this immediate retribution. It's whatever you do, you're accountable for. That's actually good news, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Good or bad, that's good news, because our lives matter. And that's, I think, what this is after.
So it's hopeful, but it's not hopeful for us here in America.
I think I think we have to transpose this passage outside of any sort of political sphere, and to say, as Christians, or as Jews, whoever's reading this passage, our lives do matter in the sense that what we do, and even though everything's falling apart around us politically or whatever, the point of this is, but what I'm doing, I'm not being held responsible for other people's actions.
That's interesting.
It's who I am, and it's what I'm doing, and it matters, and it's not a magical passage like you're saying, right? That's not what this is about. At least I hope not, because then I don't know what to do with the rest of the Bible. If this is all of a sudden about American politics.
If this is the only place to go, then that makes sense. Right. Well, good. All right. Thanks for sorting that out for us.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, absolutely.